What's the saddest story your parents ever told you about their lives? My mom was adopted and raised on a rabbit farm by her abusive parents. She had a pet rabbit she was allowed to care for. Until one day they had rabbit for dinner. It was her pet rabbit, and they didn't tell her until she had already eaten it. My mom has struggled with depression her whole life. She told me once she waited her whole life to die. This comment really hits home for me. Not actually from my dad, because he doesn't talk about it. I don't think he knows that I know. I got the story from my mom and my aunt, Dad's sister. My dad was 19 when his father went away on business. Walked out of a bar, drove his car onto a train track, locked the door, and waited. My grandfather killed his dad's dog as punishment once. He also beat all of his kids, including the youngest, which had Down syndrome. Grandpa has been dead for 20 years, but the mess he left behind is still getting cleaned up. My mom is one of 7 sisters. Her alcoholic dad used to line them up and make them aware which he thought were attractive and which were ugly. Wow, that's some serious mental abuse right there. That's ruthless. What a horrible man. Some neighborhood bullies drowned my dad's bunny when he was a kid. That's so fucking mean. I'm tearing up. My mom's mom died of a brain tumor when I was a year old. Every time she talks about her and how she wishes she had her advice about this or that, or to see me grow up, it makes me sad. My dad told me that after my mom left him, I was 2, my brother was 4, he wanted to kill himself. He thought there was no purpose to life and no joy in it. So he wanted out. He chose not to when he was awarded custody. He stuck around for me and my brother, which I'm very thankful for, but sometimes feel guilty about. A complicated emotion, I guess. My mom is Vietnamese, and her dad died young, in his 20s. This is when the French was occupying their country. Grandpa and some others decided to fight back and were crossing a stream at night to attack a French unit. They were spotted, and Grandpa was an unlucky recipient of a hand grenade. His companions managed to salvage what bits they could for burial. My mom never really wanted to marry my dad. My grandpa's dying wish was for my mom to marry my dad because he thought she was good to him. My dad ended up cheating on my mom and having a child with the mistress. My dad's mom used to lock him in the car for hours at night while she got wasted in the bar. They had my sister because they thought cowgirl would prevent them from getting pregnant. They were 19, on again, off again dating. Absolutely did not need a kid in their lives. They got married because they got pregnant, and had me a few years later. I exist because sex ed wasn't a thing in rural Wisconsin in the 70s. My mom grew up dirt poor in the Philippines, like Slumdog Millionaire poor. Her older brother died of starvation. My mom almost did too. Shortly after that incident, they moved to a different, less populated Providence with a lot more work, and things got much better for them. My grandma basically sold my 17-year-old mom to a 40-plus-year-old man. He abused her and ended up getting her pregnant a year later. She will never forgive my grandma for that. I will often think about it, get sad, and go hug her. My mom didn't want a divorce, but my dad packed up and left anyway. He moved across the country, leaving her with 3 young kids to support and look after. He married his high school sweetheart, and has told my brothers and I that he never really wanted to marry my mom in the first place. Didn't so much as hear that story as I did live it, but it's pretty damn sad. Not my parents, but my grandpa. His brother got pneumonia, and he ended up having to carry him while running to the doctor, but he ended up dying in his arms on the way there. His son also ended up dying in his arms while running to the doctor because he was choking, and this was before the Heimlich. My dad's dad tried to shoot the family when he was drunk. My grandma ran with the kids down the road to the neighbor's house to hide. They're lucky to be alive. I'm lucky to be alive. My mom was orphaned at 10 and her parents died in a plane crash. She had to go live with her aunt and uncle, who were alcoholics. My uncle put her arm in a vice and beat her with a golf club because she came home late from track practice. She managed to get away and ran to the neighbors, where they sent her back home to be beaten some more. She ran away and lived on her own when she was 14. I was kind of mad because I got a shirt or gift I did not like, I don't remember exactly, for my birthday from one of my friends. And then my dad sat down with me and talked about how his Christmas was. He said all the cloths he used were gifts from Christmas. The happiest he was when he won his first jeans at 17 years old as a gift. He went through shit way worse than that, but that story stuck with me for some reason. My mother was a victim of child sexual abuse. She and her family left her alcoholic father and stayed with family friends who abused her for several years. My grandpa was on his deathbed. My father didn't get to see him often, but tried to make the most of it by giving his father one last hug. But Grandpa had strict ideals about how men should act and pushed my father away. Masculine ideology suffocated the last meaningful embrace between a father and his son. My mom was driving home from work and forgot her seatbelt and someone ran a red light. When she woke up, she was in the same bed her dad died in a week before. My mom's parents were Holocaust survivors, each losing their spouse and one losing a child. She spent her childhood being raised by wonderful people who had been through hell, and she tried to take it upon herself to make them happy. She then married an abusive asshole. My mother's father was a rapist and child molester. He may have assaulted my older aunts. He was murdered in prison by my grandfather's ex-husband, who had enough pull to get himself transferred to the same prison. My mother also thinks that her elder sister may be her mother. As I've gotten older, my mother has told me more and more stories of all the creepy dads who would hit on or generally be inappropriate with her when she was a child/teen. Story after story. It makes my blood boil. Then my grandma started telling me all her stories. I have plenty of my own, and my younger female cousins have theirs. It all just fucking sucks. My mom once confided in me that when my dad asked her to marry him, he finished up with, "But don't tell anyone." I know they love each other dearly, and she said that he asked like that because of his recent divorce/conservative parents, but that's still a terrible way to do it. Would have been better to wait, because that stuck with her for the rest of her life. My grandfather was apparently so abusive that once my father was at his grandparents' for summer break and my grandfather was going there a week later. Because of the stress, my father, 7 years old, went to a farm and killed 50 chickens. My grandfather beat him up for that. My mom had a few sad ones, although compared to some of these, it's all relative. My mom had a pet bunny named Chester, I think that was his name, and one night they were eating dinner, and when the kids wanted to know what they were, let's just say Chester was never seen again. My mom told me that Dad's family threw a wedding reception after their wedding. Dad's family did not tell Mom's side of the family, and did not invite them either. My mom, a new bride at 19, was only surrounded by her in-laws. Dad's side of the family is very judgmental and not very nice. This was early 70s. My father passed away when I was 7, but my parents split up when I was 3. She got the call that he had passed and was numb. She went to sleep and woke herself up because she was sobbing and couldn't breathe. This also relates to the best advice she gave me, which is that sometimes love just isn't enough. My mother's father was in the U.S. military, so they moved around every few years. While in France, I believe, she went to the beach with her first boyfriend and friends. She was 14. Her boyfriend was swept up in a riptide and drowned. All while tons of people were there to witness it. She said it happened so fast. She's been through more than I can imagine. Man, I love her so much.